A few minutes late, we were having a tour of the newly remodeled fourth floor. So it looks great, everyone who was involved in that. But I will call to order this retreat meeting of the Hendersonville City Council, March 9th, 2023. Turn it over to Mr. Conant.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, members of the City Council, staff, welcome to our 2023 City Council staff retreat. This is our Thursday night session where you get to watch all the numbers and all the fun stuff. So we're looking forward tonight. The theme of this year's retreat is building a strong foundation for our growing future. But we picked that theme because we felt like it was important. The community is growing rapidly. Lots of priorities, lots of initiatives, lots of things that our citizens are asking us to do, but there's limited resources, whether that be limited dollars, but limited staff time, limited time that council can spend at meetings. So that there are capacity issues, and we really felt like this retreat should focus on establishing that foundation for where we want to go the next 3 to 5 years or so, and just build that for our growing future, because we feel like the community is going to continue to grow, the region's going to continue to grow, and you know, just it's evident of that is, I think, you know, there's a seismic shift to the west of here with the closing of the plant in Canton. What those repercussions mean for our region are yet to be seen, but I think it only means that, you know, as industries maybe locate up and down the I-26 corridor, it may continue to bring folks who may have previously been to farther west or worked farther west, because at least 40% of those employees, as we understand it, are from Buncombe County and maybe even Henderson County. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. At your seats, just a couple things we're using as props tonight as we go into this and talk about, we'll spend some time tomorrow setting priorities, but if you look at the sheet with the red heading on it, that was from 2000, that was your ranking and your prioritization from 2017. And if you look at that, of the top 5 items that we ranked in 2017, you've accomplished or are working on 4 of the 5. Public restrooms were constructed. The other buildings really related to our public works maintenance facility. That was constructed and has been in operation for several years. The police department will be tomorrow, is open and is a great facility. We've not taken any action on the Greenway expanded parking as of yet, and we're because of lack of bidders, we've not done the 7th Avenue, but we're right back on that project and should have that implemented in the coming year. So 4 of the first 5 we have clearly been able to implement based on your prioritization. And then if you look at the other sheet, you'll see the implementation or the priorities from 2020. And we've implemented many of these things also. You implemented, if you look at the bottom where your top priorities there, we implemented the pay in class. We'll talk about the 401k match tonight. We continue to work on this, on the attainable housing issue, which I think will continue to be an issue in our region and all across the state. There were numerous communities that were just, there's a news article today that was released about some of the most expensive communities in the nation, and I think the Asheville Metro, where we are, was number 7, but there were lots of other communities across North Carolina that are dealing with attainable housing. We've got the city sustainability plan that we're working on. We'll talk about that. A key priority, which I think we've done a really good job, is down at SSO, our sanitary sewer overflow prevention. We made some repairs to sewer lines. We've upsized some lines to significantly reduce our sanitary sewer overflows, and we have some other plans in the future. And your stormwater rates have been successful. So that's your prioritization from 2020. So just kind of setting the stage. You know, we want to build that foundation. We want to prioritize what's important to the city council At the end of the day tomorrow, we hope that we will have a good prioritization of what's important to you. Also, we want to check in. We'll check in throughout the day about our theme. Are we building? Do you agree that we're building a strong foundation for our growing future? And we'll check in at the end of the day tomorrow. So, and then just a little bit of logistics from a schedule perspective before I turn it over to the budget staff and Assistant Manager Polly. We'll spend till about 8 o'clock tonight going through financials, deep dives in our financing options and our financing positions. So we'll do that till about 8 o'clock. Then we'll reconvene tomorrow at the police department. Did I say police department? We're meeting at the police department tomorrow. Just want to confirm that. We'll begin about 8:30 with an orientation, 8:45, and then as you see, we'll go through the day. We'll reflect on our accomplishments. We have some we have 5 stations set up for each council member. Then we'll rotate through the stations where we cover 5 different topics, and then we'll come back and debrief about that. We'll have lunch and do some prioritization exercise in the afternoon tomorrow. So we look forward to the next couple hours tonight and then several hours tomorrow as we work through the council staff retreat. So I'll stop right there. Any questions or anything about logistics? If not, then I think I'm turning it over to Brian, and he'll go through the overview.
All right. So just before diving in, I've been reflecting a lot this year after having a kid. It kind of like really changes a lot of things, and this is my 10th budget with the city. Really excited to have Jenny Floyd with us here. She's our new budget analyst, and Adam is our budget manager. So they're going to be leading a lot of today and taking over a lot of the big budget hall. So just want to thank them to start. And then thank council also. You'll hear a lot about benefits tonight as well. And I was the recipient because of a great mentor and leader in John, and great counsel to have vision to provide benefits for our employees. I got to spend time with my daughter the first weeks of her life. So that was really important to me, and it meant a lot to our family. So just want to say thank you for that. So starting out, desired outcomes for today. So we really want to talk about what resources we have available to the public and to the council. We have a lot of really good dashboards right now that we're posting on our website. So I just want to review those so everyone knows what's going on with those. Talk about and understand financing options. Some of the things we're starting to think through from a project prioritization standpoint is get a little bit harder to finance. So talking through different options there. We're going to get an overview of key financials from the last audit that lead into our new budget year. Overview of our benefits, and then lastly, we'll dive in, talk about the revenue neutral tax rate at this early stage of revaluation, and look at how our general fund model is looking. So you saw we had a quote from John to start, and we have great quotes going throughout. This David McCandless is a data visualization wonk from London, and he talks about how, with visuals and lots of data, it's always helpful to have a map, and these visuals kind of serve as that map. So we thought that was appropriate, talking about our city resources. Here's just some images of them. We have a Gantt chart on our city website if you want to see where projects are in your community. We're introducing a revenue neutral revaluation calculator. So if you're in the public and you have your tax bill, you can go online and see how much your tax bill has changed from the previous year to the current year based on your unique situation. We've got mapping charts, and we'll be talking through kind of our council retreat dashboard today as well. But really quick, just to show 2 of the items, and we'll check in on these throughout the day. If you go to our website under departments and budget, you can see we have 6 dashboards that have been updated here. One of them is our budget report. So any member of the public can jump on. This data used to be always held, back behind secure logins in our ERP systems. Things have, grown in such a way with technology today that we can actually take that data and make it readily available live on our website. So this, Believe Accounting posts the 10th of every month. So the February numbers are about to go up, and you can go in and see how the government is spending your dollars through every fund and through every line item if you want to. So that information is out there on the website. Just wanted to bring awareness to that. and then also our Gantt chart. So if you're interested in any projects going on in the city, you can log on here and see what's under construction in green, what's under design in blue, and what's under evaluation in the light blue. If you want to filter by just government facilities, you just click the box and it will show you those projects. If you want to see what's going on in our Great Stormwater Program, you can click that box and see what's going on there as well. So I just wanted to bring awareness to those to start the day, and we'll highlight others ones of those as we go. So as we get started, and before I turn it over, Jerry Maguire here. So we're gonna have great quotes as it goes. We'll see how they turn out. But I'm gonna turn it over to Adam and Jenny in a moment, but I just wanna highlight a couple financing options that will be helpful when thinking through our projects for the next few days. The first is a basic bank-placed or limited obligation bond. We call them 160A installment financing. So they're typically financed using a building or a facility as a security. That's the main financing source. Sometimes you'll see vehicles or other items as securities. You can borrow these at 80% loan to value. I want to highlight that because I think that's important for any future borrowings that we're doing, that we're looking at the security and we're thinking through, should we be tying in sidewalk projects or paving projects or park projects on top of that financing, because those projects don't have a natural security to them. So when we are pledging an asset like City Hall, we could borrow up to $7.5 million where the building is worth $6 million. So thinking through that from a perspective of not having to issue a general obligation bond to fund a road project or a sidewalk project, you can get the money through pledging an asset like a physical security, like a facility. And these typically have good interest rates. You'll have all this information as cheat sheets for tomorrow as well. And our current buildings that don't have any sort of existing security on them include City Hall at a value of $6 million. You can see the loan we could receive would be up to $7.5 million. City operations, $5.5 million. Sugarloaf Warehouse, $2.5 million. Whitmire Center, $1.5 million. And Motor Pool at $1.2 million. So those are all our existing facilities that don't have some sort of existing indebtedness associated with them and are available to pledge as security. The second I wanted to hit on was general obligation bonds. We haven't issued a GO bond since 2008. We issued a GO bond for sidewalks. The typical bond approval for GO bonds, typically you see GO bonds for parks, sidewalks, transportation, greenways, and housing, those things that don't have some sort of asset that a bank can come and take on the back end. These do pledge the full faith and credit as security, so you're gonna get your best interest rate with a general obligation bond. And that full faith and credit means the bondholders, if you're not paying them back, can come in and raise the tax rate to recoup their money. So it is extremely secure. You're pledging the tax rate of the community. Since it is pledging that tax rate, it does require a voter referenda. So you have to time this issuance with one of the election cycles. Master planning is highly encouraged for GO bonds. It's good to have a list of projects from some sort of plan that you can say, we're going to pledge $10 million to go after the projects in this plan, because as we know, it takes time to design, implement projects. A lot of time cost escalates, and you don't want to say we're going to do these 5 projects specifically because you might run out of money after the first 3. So it's good to kind of base these bonds off of master planning documents. And there is a long lead time leading up to a general obligation bond issuance. So if it is something you're interested in, it's something we need to start preparing for today, which might be issued in 2 years. To do it right, you need to take time to do it. Special obligation bonds are the third. Don't typically see these being issued in North Carolina. This is sales taxes serving as the security on the bond. So the interest rate's not as good, and we can issue those through our municipal service districts. There's only like kind of special unique circumstances where you can issue a special obligation bond, and one of those is through an MSD. So if we wanted to pledge our sales tax, we could do a project in one of our MSDs. And then lastly, our synthetic TIFs or public-private partnerships. They mimic a simple installment financing like a 160A, but you're essentially saying, we're going to pay off this debt with future development from some sort of public-private partnership, like building a parking deck and having a multifamily residential or a hotel come along with it, and you use that new revenue from the new tax base to pay off the debt service. Those aren't very typical in North Carolina, but we do see them in South Carolina. You'll have this tomorrow, and this is just an overview of all our planning documents. I don't think it's probably all inclusive, but we try to get a good swag at everything we have on there. And last updated being the furthest updated first. So our pedestrian plan was last updated in 2007. You can see we're actively updating that right now, and it should be done in 2023. Similarly with our parks master plan and comp plan, both last updated in 2008 and 2009, also expected to be updated this year or next year. Others I'd call attention to are some of the NA areas. We haven't really explored these before, but affordable housing strategic plan, zoning ordinance, major kind of update overhaul, downtown master plan, which is currently happening in cohesion with our comp plan, and a stormwater master plan that's currently undergoing right now. So we'll have this tomorrow for questions and advice on kind of what we should be focusing on. But wanted to give this in relation to a general obligation bond issuance. We really would want to have these things in place prior to issuing a GO bond. And with that, I'll turn it over to the boring part. So have you heard about a joke? See, that's a great quote. And caveat, Adam's not an accountant, son.
Good evening, folks. Brian's trying to throw me under the bus before I even start. So to counteract Brian's quote on the next slide, I have chosen to quote Jeffrey the Dude Lebowski to set the tone for the evening. So I'm going to try to throw a little entertainment into the first few slides, and then we'll get into the numbers. But just to summarize FY22, it was a crazy time, very volatile market. We had housing price inflation, 13%, folks moving out of major metros to small towns like Hendersonville. Unemployment rates went from 5.6% at the beginning of the fiscal year to 3.4% by the end of the fiscal year. We had a lot of consumer hate on the market, so people really disdained purchasing things, but they were doing so at a record pace, which was really interesting. Too much online shopping led to a strong sales tax collection, and I'd correlate the hate to a rapidly increasing consumer price index. And most of that consumer price index was brought upon by a changing federal funds rate, which is what we typically call the Federal Reserve changing the interest rate, at the rate at which financial institutions borrow money from each other. And we also had a bunch of crazy guys with diamond hands and Wall Street bets trying to take on hedge funds. And, maybe this isn't so applicable to local government budgeting, but it is applicable to the culture that we were dealing with in FY22. There were a bunch of folks out there who instantly thought they would become investors and start trying to take on Wall Street, which eventually ended in financial tragedy for a lot of families. So despite that craziness, we continued on as a city and tried to provide some level of stability. We improvised, we adapted, we overcame, and there were a plethora of externalities that were forcing our hand on a number of issues. But despite all that, the budget office continued to budget conservatively and with expert precision. So Exhibit A of this, I'd like to provide some evidence. Brian estimated property tax revenues at $11,553,992. Our actuals were just $5,925 off, which is a 0.05% difference. So luck, I think not. We have this down to a pretty solid science. We're always looking into a crystal ball. We're never going to hit 0% unless we are lucky. But this was the product of a lot of hard work and planning, especially by Brian, who was out on paternity leave. So big kudos to him. And in addition to that, the council made a lot of decisions in FY22 to support the community through the ongoing pandemic. We started our 7th Avenue streetscape, we did branding, and we had our very popular Love Hendo initiative. And we also supported our staff, which is important because our staff ultimately take care of the community. Next one, please, Brian. So, in summary, on setting the stage, council really cared and acted in support of the community. We provided stability in a world and a market full of chaos. We built a longer table, not a taller fence. And while we were doing all of this, our community had diamond hands, according to the Wall Street Bets folks, and held on for dear life. So, transitioning away from the sillies and into the details, and I'm sure you guys are just so happy to hear. We're going to start by examining the Power BI dashboard that our team has worked so hard on, and talk a little bit about the general fund to start, followed by the MSDs, followed by the enterprise funds. So before we do the numbers specifically, just a reminder on how to read the table for everybody in the room, audience included. For each of these categories, we've got subcategories for revenues, expenditures, and other financing sources. So revenues are the money we take in, expenditures are the actions we take that require the revenues, and other financing sources are a little bit more complicated. They involve transfers, financial actions, sale of assets, things that don't well fit into just a regular revenue or expenditure category. So we'll try to focus just on the revenues, the expenditures, and fund balance this evening, just to make it quick. If you have questions, please let us know. We're happy to stop and answer, because I do need a drink of water every now and then. So the general fund is propped up in majority by the ad valorem property tax revenue. The second major source of revenue is the sales tax, followed by the utility sales tax revenue, which is an unrestricted intergovernmental source of revenue, among some other items. The fund supports the general operations, of the city that can't be categorized in other funds. So in the general fund, we include services like police, fire, public works, planning, finance, admin, so on and so forth, that are funded primarily through property tax, sales tax, and utility tax. So out of those revenue sources, the ad valorem property tax is the largest for the city of Hendersonville. And in FY22, we began with a requested $10.6 million budget. So you can see that in the top left, which assumed no increase to the property tax rate. That was just assuming that we had our 1.34% assessed value increase. Through the budget process, through your collective forward thinking, the planning that's been completed by our staff, and what we've heard from the community, we chose to increase that property tax revenue, to about $11.5 million. And that $11.5 million was achieved through increasing the property tax rate from 49 cents in FY21 to 52 cents in FY22 per $100 of assessed value. Some other important factors to consider in our property tax calculation and assumptions. I've already mentioned the 1.34% assessed value increase. We also assume that Henderson County, who we've partnered with, is going to collect those property taxes at a 98% collection rate. So across North Carolina, that is a very stable, very high collection rate, and we're very appreciative of that partnership. So these factors led to the value of a penny on the property tax rate increasing from $219,500 in FY21 to $222,500 in FY22. The increase in assessed value along with our increased tax rate, was used to fund the high priority items that staff, council, the community decided were high priority and that we should march forward with. Some of those items include 10% cost of living adjustment, which was higher than actually I think Brian and I recommended at the time. We set a recommendation of, I think it was 7%, and at your budget workshop meeting and leading into FY22, we were directed by you all, by council, to increase that to 10% in anticipation, of implementation of our paying classification study. So, forward-thinking initiative there. That property tax increase helped fund a large portion of that cost of living adjustment and the paying class study. We also needed to take on 100% of the salary and benefits for firefighters on our first SAFER grant. There were 3 of them, and a larger portion of our firefighters on our second SAFER grant. There were 12 firefighters on that grant. We added some FTEs, a few police officers, a few HR folks, a finance person, and a couple public works staff. And finally, the other driving force that we used that 3-cent tax rate increase was for the debt payment on Fire Engine 3, the addition of 15 fleet vehicles, and estimated debt service for the 7th Avenue Streetscape, the Fire Station 1 project, Ladder 1, and Engine 1, based on our financial forecasting models. So I think that covers property tax. I'll take a pause. Are there any questions I can help with?
Adam, I think the only thing I'd add, go ahead, Jerry.
The chart that you have up there is 49 cents, right?
That's the average tax rate for the time period showing on that screen. So you can see those past 10 years, the average tax rate was 49 cents.
Not actual, but
And that's average penny, average collection, so on and so forth. And you could look at this and actually drag it back all the way to 1999, and you can see the trends in our assessed value in property taxes and percent change. And I think one thing that we always like to highlight and remember is, pre-recession, you see the strong percent growth there in the bottom left. During the recession, you really can't even tell where the second reval was. It was right here, this 0.88, less than 1%. And then post-COVID, I guess what we call this last one, things are doing well. But also concurrently, when you look up at the property tax rate, you can see during the good years, it was just pretty steady, dropped a good bit. And then when we didn't have any tax-based growth, the tax rate rose. And you'll also see correlations with fund balance when we talk about that later.
It's also interesting to look at, Brian, the lapse in time, you look at the average value of the penny, how that has increased from about 150,000 per penny. And I think at the end of this 10-year cycle, it's close to, you're almost at 250, I think, 235 there, but yeah.
Sales tax, please, sir. So the second largest source of revenue for the general fund is the sales and use tax, which we just abbreviate and call sales tax. It's very complicated. Brian and I have explained it a few times. I'm not going to try to do all of that again tonight. Tomorrow you do have a cheat sheet in your packets that will provide you that lays out what some of the different articles are, how they add up to that 6.75% that you see on any sale bill that you get within Henderson County or the Hendersonville city limits. But what I do want to say is that, just a reminder, it's an elastic revenue source, meaning all the crazy Wall Street bets people out there influence what happens with our sales tax forecasting. It is very market dependent. It's very consumer driven. It depends on the amount of activity in the market. In addition to some collections and distributions factors that are determined by the state and legislation. So It's collected by vendors, it's sent to the state sends it back to Henderson County, and then the Henderson County distributes it to the municipalities on an ad valorem basis. So at any given time, Henderson County can change that to per capita, but that's unlikely because it would reduce the amount of sales tax revenue that the county gets to keep. So for now, we are at an ad valorem distribution for sales tax in FY22 and FY23 and forecasted for FY24 and beyond. So to start FY22, we budgeted $4.6 million in sales tax revenue. And due to the elasticity that I mentioned, we still remain very conservative on increasing the revenue source, especially during the pandemic period. Brian and I were primarily concerned with how consumer spending would change, worried that businesses would shut down, people would spend less money as a result, and hold on to their stimulus checks. Well, we were a little wrong about that, but we were happy that we were conservative in that estimate. So, looking year over year, we typically budget for a 5% increase. That was the case going into FY22. And if you look at the line chart in Brian's Power BI file, you can see that there's a 13.88% average increase from FY13 to now. If you shorten that to FY18 to now, there's about an 18% increase in sales tax revenue year over year. So it's volatile. There have been sharp increases. There's somebody even crazier than Brian and I named Keith Lane over in Durham County who sends out these reports. And he was even like, yeah, we should probably just budget for 5%, understanding that this can't keep happening. It's not sustainable. So we're very conservative with our sales tax revenue forecasts. So by the end of FY22, our actual sales tax collections exceeded that $4.6 million. We ended up earning about $5.2 million, which was approximately $677,000 increase over the adopted budget. We continue to use that difference to creatively, sustainably, and efficiently leverage that additional resource and address unforeseen opportunities during the fiscal year. So we don't let that sit. We typically use it to increase services. The budget process is ongoing. We like to try to hit it once at the beginning of the year, but that's not the way it works, unfortunately. So all of our wonderful department heads in the room find creative ways to help us spend that money down.
Examples of those sales tax returns coming in, we're spending that money on capital purchases. So you'll have a budget amendment come in to purchase the property on William Street for additional parking. That's funded through sales tax revenues coming in higher than expected. So those are the types of purchases. We don't want to start purchasing anything that's recurring, like people or debt service, with those additional sales tax proceeds, because they can go away.
And my final little detailed note, so 94% of the city's total sales tax collection stays in the general fund, 5% goes to the Main Street MSD, and 1% goes to the 7th Avenue MSD. And that's based on a rough percentage of the assessed value for each of those districts. So looking at this year thus far, we're continuing to see strong sales tax trends. We're cautious in our outlook towards the future, and that's not out of lack of knowledge. It's out of understanding what sales tax is and what the best practices are across the budgeting world, at least in North Carolina, with dealing with that revenue source. Anything from a CPI change to the war in Ukraine and other international factors. If a boat gets stuck like the Evergreen did somewhere in a canal, that can change sales tax, because then there are less products for us to buy, right? So all of that affects our sales tax collections. Looking towards FY24, just as a reminder, you all have resolved to pursue a 1/4 cent municipal sales tax option, which would be added to sales that occur within the Hendersonville city limits. A similar bill was proposed by the town of Pineville, Senate Bill 247, and I think it's in the Rules Committee right now. So the implications of that bill, that article, if you want to call it that, Article 47, it would generate about $3.5 million of annual revenue from additional sales tax increases. And that's extremely beneficial for us because it helps relieve the burden on property taxpayers and gets us an additional revenue source from visitors, from folks who use our services that are coming from out of town and frequenting our businesses. So definitely an option that we continue to pursue. And final reminder, you'll be given more information about the articles and sales tax tomorrow. Any questions on sales tax?
Adam, can we hit real quick on value of a penny on the
Yes.
property tax rate?
Yes.
Just to give some insight, we do have a page that analyzes the distribution method in Henderson County. So we are assessed value. So that means the tax rate, or it's based on tax levy. So that means the assessed value and the tax rate impact our sales tax collections. So property tax affects our sales tax. And it's volatile because if someone raises property taxes, that means we're going to probably lose sales tax money that year.
You wanted to talk about reval?
Yeah, and revals are extremely volatile for this revenue source because everyone's assessed value is changing pretty dramatically, and everyone's going to change their tax rate in some form or fashion. So it's we'll be monitoring this, and by the time we get close to June, by the time it's probably too late to react, we'll know what's going to hit us. So we'll be watching that. Adam and Jenny have calculated the value of 1 penny of property tax affects us about $63,000 worth of sales taxes. So,
and final complicating factor, revals this year, well, FY24, the year we're going into. I'm operating in 3 different years right now. Reval happens in FY24. The sales tax implications of reval and where we end up in relation to the other communities and their property tax rate will affect us in FY25. So there's a delayed effect to that change, not only in property tax, but also in sales tax per penny.
and that's demonstrated on the screen right now. You can see the tax rate change on the prior year when we raised taxes 3 cents for FY22. We're filtered for FY23 right now. Our percentage share increased 5% of the total bucket after raising taxes by 3 cents. So this is always available. One example I always like to show just to keep us cautious is you see the 7 cent and the 5 cent tax increases from Henderson County and Mills River back in FY18. And if you go to that same year, you can see our sales tax percent change dropped pretty dramatically throughout that year. So something always to keep in mind.
The comparison is not actually it's actually what your assessment brings in. So if you lower your percentage, but you're bringing in more money, that's the real comparison, right? It's not just a number. Like in other words, if you went revenue neutral, but that actually brought in
That's
more,
correct. Yeah. It's
so,
the levy at the end of the day.
yeah, it's not the necessarily the number, it's what you're actually bringing in. Right?
Mm-hmm. All right, Adam, where to?
Utility sales tax. So a third largest source and also reported by the Department of Revenue is the utility sales tax. It's a lot more consistent than regular sales tax, and it is also categorized as an unrestricted intergovernmental source of revenue. The utility sales tax includes those four categories, and they are electric, natural gas, telecommunications, and video programming. So dating back to FY19, we collected pretty much the same amount as we are today between those four sources of revenue in aggregate. The percent change was 0.11% across that period. So very little elasticity. But the one thing I will note is if you look at the chart, you can kind of see this trend. The electricity utility sales tax is increasing. So it's becoming a larger portion of each of those bars, while the telecommunications sales tax is decreasing year over year. Natural gas is also increasing. So electricity increasing, natural gas increasing offsets the telecommunications decreasing, which leaves us relatively consistent. On average, our budget and our actuals are about $1.27 million for that utility sales tax. And the final key factor in the general fund I want to hit on this evening is our fund balance. So transitioning away from the revenues, the city's existing fund balance policy was last edited on June 3rd of 22, so upon adoption of this year's budget. And the policy changed because the local government commission issued this memo. It was titled 2204 because they're accountant robots and they like to number everything. So in this memo, the LGC tracked fund balance on a percent of general fund expenditures basis rather than a population basis. So we were, as you can see, this gray bar here, we used to track our fund balance target by a percentage of our population group. So it was a constantly moving target. It fluctuated up and down, but mostly up year over year. So in this new target methodology, we were categorized as a government with expenditures over $10 million. That's their highest category. So we're in the same group as the city of Charlotte, city of Raleigh, city of Asheville, whoever you want to compare ourselves against. But the target for that group is to maintain a 25% available fund balance. And again, our policy now matches that guidance. We are at, for FY22, we were at 30.12%. And the reason this is important is because if we don't meet this target, the LGC makes it very hard for us to issue all the cool debt options that Brian suggested that help us fund all of our capital. I do want to hit on some trends that you can see from the chart above. So, you know, in FY13, we were at about 68.3% available. And through some spending, that was probably intentional savings for a major project. And through the years, as we've done a better and better job at planning and executing on our projects, we've spent that fund balance down intentionally to get closer to that target. And the reason behind that is we want to be saving enough money to be financially sustainable and to have budget for unforeseen opportunities, but we also want to show the taxpayer that we are providing services, that we're not just a government hoarding money because, you know, we're not managing our finances right. So to summarize, the specific items for FY22 are available or unassigned fund balance was $5.8 million or 30.12%. Our net fund balance increased from the beginning of FY22 to close out by $36,775. In FY23, we budgeted a $1.6 million fund balance use. Again, that's this year, but based on forecasting, we estimate we're only going to use $12,000 of that. Looking ahead, this is going to be, you know, a continued important factor as we plan our debt, plan our capital projects, and play the balancing game with our personnel and operating expenditures as well. So now, Jenny gets to talk to you guys for the first time, and she's going to run through the Main Street and 7th Avenue MSDs.
You say it up there, I just can't see it.
Yeah.
What does roughly a percentage of the fund balance equal?
A percentage of the fund balance?
Like,
Question. Let's see. I've got a number in here somewhere.
see if Brian's
Let me
got it
let me
modeled.
dig for it a little bit, and I'll pull it out for you.
Yeah, I don't know that one.
Yeah, but if you look at, so we're at 30%. That's close to $6 million. So do some quick division and figure that one out here on the calculator. One thing I would add on this too is, if you notice, like Adam said, the number was bouncing up and down. They just kind of selected 25% as the target. There's no calculation. It's kind of nice because it's consistent. We know what it's going to be every year now, but it used to be a calculation. Now it's just 25. That's the line. So
When you said kind of back when it was in the 60 range percent, that it looked as though they were planning for expenses. When you like, is that actually a true statement? I mean, it looked as though, but is that what they were actually doing?
I could dig back in the history and probably find.
I can talk to that one.
Yeah.
Looks like it's about 200,000 per percentage point. And if I did the math correctly, 6 million divided by 30. The fund balance available back then, Jen, was in a capital reserve fund.
Okay.
We didn't actually spend it on capital, and the capital reserve fund actually wasn't formally adopted the way it needed to be adopted. Okay. So it was showing as available in this model. And that's why that percentage was really high. What we did is we took the money and we transferred it to a debt service fund, and we paid down a bunch of debt early to get that off our books. And then we had more operating space for those next years. So when it dropped down in that FY16, we had paid off a lot of debt through a debt service fund with that money.
Thanks for that, Brian. I was in high school when that number was there. 2011, class of 2011.
Goodbye, Adam.
You're doing great, Adam. You
Thank you.
really blew
Thank
it.
you for that. Thank you.
I told you I'd try to get you guys.
All right, good evening, everybody. I'm going to start off by telling you a little bit about what our Main Street and 7th Avenue districts have been doing. So as we came out of COVID, we saw the downtown district brighten the city with the completion of the sidewalk mural for the downtown art route. The continuation of the farmers market hosted an average of 1,000 people every Saturday with 32 vendors, 75% of which are from right here in Henderson County. The Friends of Downtown awarded 14 grants to businesses in the Main Street and 7th Avenue districts, which helped them pivot their business models and keep our downtown bustling. The connectivity of our city is increasing with the Maple Street streetscape completed, which increased pedestrian traffic from 7th Avenue to Main Street, and the 19-mile-long Acosta Trail, which is wrapping up the design phase and moving into the construction phase in the next few months. Both projects will have a positive impact on Main and 7th Avenue, and it's safe to say that we had a successful rebound from the fever dream that was 2020. Two things for you guys to keep in mind. Looking forward to the future, the FY24 revaluation cycle, the Downtown Advisory Board and City Council may want to continue exploring tax rate equalization options for the Main Street MSD and 7th Avenue. There's also an increasing need for a dedicated public works crew for the districts. To move into the numbers. So there's an assessed value of $118.6 million for downtown. For property tax, there was a requested amount of $300,000. $276,000 of that was adopted. The estimate to actual difference was 6,713%, or 2.4% higher than estimated. For sales tax, as Adam mentioned, downtown gets 5% of the distribution. We had a requested amount of $216,000, and we ended up adopting $225,000. The estimate to actual difference is $34,559, which is 15.2% higher than estimated. Again, as Adam stated, we saw higher than estimated sales tax throughout the city. For permits and fees, good news. We saw Apple Festival come back, Garden Jubilee, Art on Main. And so while the estimate was $253 and the adopted was $250, we actually saw revenue of $28,030, which is fantastic. Moving into the expenditure side of things, we, for the operating fund, we had requests for $273,000, and we ended up adopting just over $274,000. For the estimate to actual, it was a difference of $65,340, which was 24.5% higher. This was due to a tax incentive ending, which was about $17,000, and then the way that utilities were billed between downtown and 7th, everything was coming out of downtown, which is, it's going to be fixed. For capital, there was 17,000 requested and 17,000 adopted. However, we saw an actual of 0%. I mean, $0. That's because this was budgeted in non-capital, and it was transferred to operating to purchase holiday decor and lighting. Moving into 7th Avenue, we have an assessed value of $21.6 million. For property tax, we had requested at $34,887. The adopted budget was just under $35,000. Our estimate to actual difference was $1,232, so 3.36% higher. Sales tax, 7th Avenue gets 1%. So we had a requested amount of just over $43,000, and we ended up adopting a $43,500 budget. The estimate to actual difference was $6,661, which was 14.5% higher than estimated. Again, a trend that we're seeing throughout the city. Moving over to the expenditure side for the operating budget, we had a requested amount of just over $47,000, and that was mirrored in the adopted amount. The estimated to actual difference is $31,928, which was 69.4% lower than estimated. Again, this is due to that electricity billing that was coming out of downtown. So that is it for the MSDs. Back to Adam for water and sewer.
On fund balance real
Oh,
quick.
yeah, sorry. I'm overlooking the important things here. So for, where am I at here? Will you pull that up? Yeah. Okay, so for Main Street, we had the beginning of the year fund balance was $205,823. And the end of year fund balance was $193,759. These funds can be used for a one-time capital project. The same with 7th Avenue, which we saw a fund balance of $132,715 at the beginning of the year, and then end of year $153,000, which is extremely healthy for 7th Avenue. Oh, you're welcome, Bob.
On these type funds here, the sort of fund balance calculation that we just looked at for the overall budget, does it apply to each fund?
It does not.
Okay.
Yeah, so this money is essentially money that, I know Jamie and the Downtown Advisory Committee are working to figure out what are good one-time projects to spend this money on to enhance downtown.
That's totally our decision on that fund balance.
That's correct. And you go into the presentation, Adam?
Yes.
Okay.
No.
No?
Water sewer.
Water
funds.
sewer.
Oh, water sewer.
Yeah, we got to do the enterprise funds. We're halfway there, guys. While Brian's hunting that down, the water sewer utility moved full steam ahead in FY22. We completed a lot of PAYGO capital installations and purchases. We had a lot of debt from new projects coming online. We made edits to our rates, and we continued our transition for our inside-outside water rate differential. So we were at 145% in FY21, went to 140% in FY22, and we're going to keep chipping away at that 5% at a time until FY30 unless council directs us otherwise. But what staff understands is take 5% off that differential each year. So let's see where we are. looking at the water sewer fund, you'll notice the charges for service revenue is the largest revenue source. So that's water sales, sewer collections. It's pretty inelastic. We're really good at forecasting it. We've got an understanding of where we're going to end up at the end of the year due to our financial modeling, our work with rate consultants, and the data that we get from the AMI system. So thank you, huge thank you to the finance and the operating staff that maintain all the meters and the billing data. Without that, I couldn't have an accurate forecast. Unfortunately for FY22, I was not 0.05% off like Brian was with the general fund. I was a little bit more conservative, concerned with some of the industry, some of the customers using less water, having to ramp down production during the pandemic, but that clearly was not the case. So that 3.9% and the estimated to actual, so $639,000 can be attributed to me being overly cautious with the water and sewer fund budget. But rest assured, we did find a place to use that, and it did not go to waste. I will say that one of the complicating factors that might have made my model a little bit more accurate, if you look at the permits and fees revenues in addition to the charges for service revenues, those were actually off by a lot more. We got a new auditor that year, and they may have categorized something differently than the previous auditors did. So I'm going to say that the auditors messed me up. So let's see. The permits and fees revenue, all jokes aside, is more elastic. It's totally driven by development. The majority of that is things like bright water fees, tap fees, anything related to connecting to and expanding the utility system. So we're pretty consistent in getting about $750,000 to $780,000 a year for that revenue source. But we do maintain a conservative outlook and budgeting for the future on that. The difference there between the estimate and the actual is $146,000. Sorry, $136,000. And the reason these two revenue sources are important is because in aggregate, they're used to fund capital projects, debt service, and all of our ongoing operating and personnel costs. The one thing I do want to call back attention to on the bottom line revenues, it looks like it changed in the model, but I was showing a 1.2% variance from estimate to actual on the bottom line revenue. So there might have been a slight last minute change there, but that's okay. So all that being said, we raise these revenues because we have to follow a bond covenant for the water sewer fund. That was established through our 2019 revenue bond general trust indenture and first series indenture for Etowah and the AMI refinancing project. So in order for us to stay in good graces with our lending agencies, we have to make sure both of these calculations are above 1.0. And for FY22, you can see based on the data provided in the ACFR, the ACFR, we received a 1.72% for bond covenant A and a 1.35 for bond covenant B. The only difference between those two calculations is that covenant A includes 20% of our surplus funds. So not only the water sewer fund balance, the accountants don't like to call water sewer fund balance, but the water sewer fund balance, the balance in 459, which is reserved for capital expenditures related to system expansion, and any cash sitting in our capital project fund, which is left over from projects that may have come in under budget, which is very rare. So we were in our lenders' good graces. We are going to be able to continue moving forward with our FY23 revenue bond that will be discussed here pretty soon between us and you all, City Council. You'll you'll be able to decide which projects we're going to finance moving forward for the water sewer system. And I do want to just remind you that, you know, a primary driver of the system, our revenues, and getting this done is all the capital planning efforts that are done by staff, Adam Sturr, Lee Smith, and the entire utilities department team. So getting more precisely into the numbers, in FY22, we paid, Brian, if you could go back to the financial summary tables. We paid, unless this has changed too, $804,000 for PAYGO capital projects out of a budgeted $1.28 million. And this was put to good use. We used it to update our fleet in the water sewer fund, purchase capital equipment, install generators, get a CCTV vehicle to inspect our infrastructure, and then continue doing master planning, which is critical to the future maintenance and understanding of our assets for generations to come. So we also do modeling and, you know, comprehensively get an understanding of the system with the budget that's in that capital line. In FY22, yes.
Are there prepayment penalties for early payoff on like capital expenses in water and sewer?
On certain debt, I think there is, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Like, how do you know which debt? Is it a specific type?
It would be based on the project and the lending type. So
Okay.
on the SRF loans, I don't think there's a prepayment penalty. On the revenue bonds, I don't think that's the case either. But if we had an installment financing, it would really depend on what our agreement with the bank looks like.
Okay.
So we can research and see if there are any penalties for any of the outstanding debt that we currently have and get back to you on that. So the existing system debt, it's not up there, but that debt service, the $3,261,949 figure, that includes debt on a wastewater treatment plant SRF loan, a Brightwater SRF loan. A lot of these are SRF loans. Jackson Park Sewer SRF loan, Shepherd Atkinson SRF loan, Wolf Pen Water and Sewer SRF loan, and then finally our 2019 revenue bond for the Etowah project and the AMI refinancing.
The SRF is state revolving loan money. It's money that we borrow from the state and repay it to the state at a very favorable interest rate, and the money's lent back out to other local governments. So it just revolves, and it's part federal money and part state money.
We assume a 1.5% interest rate on that debt, so it is very low, lower than the inflation rate. Yes, sir.
Wow.
So Adam,
so our rate is lower than the federal fund.
It's half the going rate, so it will change. Yeah, half the rate.
So last thing I want to hit on with the water sewer fund is, of course, the fund balance, what we're going to call the fund balance. We had an increase in fund balance from the beginning of FY22 to close out at the end. We added $1.4 million, so that did get updated. So that was about an 18% increase in the available fund balance for the water sewer operating fund. We also continued our trend of transferring $100,000 out to Fund 459, which is our capital reserve fund for system expansion projects. And ultimately, this resource, which we're building up intentionally, helps us meet our bond covenants and save for future capital projects. And biggest picture, help stabilize customer rates. That's all I've got for the sewer fund. Jenny's going to wrap it up with the other enterprise funds, and then we'll transition away from the number beating.
One thing while Jenny's coming up, just to highlight, our fund balance in the water and sewer fund was in the $23 to $24 million range back when John and I had started, and one of the directions from council was to bring, put that towards projects, and we've gotten to a comfortable level around $10 million. And you'll hear in the rate model presentation in April at the workshop meeting about kind of the need to use that fund balance for projects when it gets up a little bit, but kind of having a stable rate. So that's something we'll be bringing to you for kind of further analysis and policy decision making.
All right. So if anybody knows Mike Huffman, you know that he spends a lot of time on grant applications, but that's not all he does. FY22 is a busy year for stormwater. They completed no less than 11 different projects and initiatives, including a CCTV survey of 60,000 linear feet of stormwater lines, a large culvert repair at Henderson Village, and planting 3,000 live stakes. They hosted 3 stream cleanup events, multiple trash trout cleanouts, and a stream bank stabilization project at Saddlebrook HOA. You'll hear more about the future of the stormwater event at your second monthly meeting in March. Topics will include rates, future of the infrastructure, and service levels. Getting into the nitty-gritty with the financials, the largest source of revenue for the Stormwater Fund is going to be charges for service. There was a requested and adopted amount of $1.27 million. The actual to estimate was a difference of $271,000, which was 21.3% less than estimated. This was because there's a restriction on billing residents that live in ETJs. Moving to the expenditures, stormwater is pretty quick. On operating, we had a requested budget of $438,000, and we ended up adopting a budget of just over $298,000. The estimate to actual is a difference of $306,692, and this was due to transfers from those capital accounts to pay for contracted services. For capital, we had a requested amount of $845,000 and ended up adopting a $485,000 budget. The estimate to actual, as reflected in the operating, was a difference of $428,000. And again, that's because of those contracted services. For the fund balance, beginning of the year fund balance was $418,000, and the end of the year fund balance was $207,936. Moving on from stormwater to environmental services. Our environmental services department offers residents of the city services that go above and beyond neighboring jurisdictions. With almost 5,000 accounts, the environmental service department offers bulk goods and leaf collections at little to no cost to our customers, in addition to the typical trash and recycling pickup. Our rates are some of the lowest in the region, and our employees are regularly recognized by customers for their hard work. This fund is structured to be self-sustaining. However, because of the high level of service and the recent implementation of the pay and class findings, there was a transfer from the general fund into the ESF for FY22. As mirrored in stormwater, charges for service are the biggest revenue source for the ESF. There was a requested and adopted amount of $1.4 million. The estimate to actual difference was $31,117, 2.09% higher than estimated. For the operating, moving on to expenditures, we had a requested amount of $496,000 with an adopted amount of $520,000. The estimate to actual difference is $33,040, which was 6% lower than estimated. And with capital, requested amount was $200,000 with an adopted amount of $380,000. The estimate to actual difference there was $243,309. This was due to a large piece of equipment with a long lead time, so those funds were moved into FY23, which you'll see mirrored in the fund balance, where we had a beginning of the year of $100,000 and an end of year fund balance of $261,000. And that wraps up the enterprise funds.
Jenny or Brian, the transfer in of $48,208, is that, or was that, we ended up not doing that transfer, right?
sorry, I don't know. It doesn't come through the system. We didn't end up having to do that because of the truck. Yeah, but the fund is not sustaining itself currently. That's a big point that we'll have to talk through this year. We've been dwindling the fund balance to keep rates low, but we are going to need to address rates. As cost of service for everywhere has been going up. I think Public Works is going to talk about some rate comparisons at a future meeting, but our cost of service has increased in this fund. Our personnel costs have increased in this fund, and revenues haven't kept pace. So we're going to have to talk with y'all about rates this coming go around.
Years ago, we talked about there being an actual like route study. Did we do that already?
We have not done it.
That was just up there once we had not done it, wasn't it?
That's correct.
Okay.
It is getting done, but it's not been done yet. So
Did we do
We
it?
hear the importance.
yeah, we knew that too. Yeah, we made them. We remind. I'm sorry.
No, I heard you.
I'm good now. Yeah, we're good.
Do we do any stormwater work in the ETJ?
We are required to maintain our permit within the ETJ, so we do maintain and inspect all the systems out there. And we also, are for the permit, we're supposed to be providing education and all the requirements of that permit. So we are responsible for it, yes.
But
We don't maintain any structures or anything.
We inspect structures, but we don't maintain any city structures.
Yeah.
That's correct.
The staff.
But legally, we're not allowed to charge that stormwater fee in ETJ?
That's correct.
That's right.
Did we know that before we forecasted?
Yeah.
No,
Hey,
we found out after. Yeah, that's why
We
that's
figured that out.
different.
Oh.
We figured that out and changed it.
because if you go back, the
Yeah.
stormwater fee when it started out as $1
Yeah.
back in the day, it was for everything, and then when we put the utility in place,
That was back 340,000 back in FY19. Yeah.
Adam's smiling, so that must,
now that we do.
that must be a little running thing for you too.
We had a few discussions with Angie and John B.
Blame the lawyer.
So is that a statewide rule for ETJ?
mhm. It was raised by the county also, so, if I remember correctly.
More inspirational on the quote for this set of slides and less goofy. We did, because we've done so much work in the last few years related to, just employee benefits in general, and also on the back end of the paying class study and feedback we've collected from state surveys. I want to talk to you guys about our employee benefits. So on the next slide, Brian, wanted to reiterate that we're trying to build a longer table and not a higher fence. And the salaries and benefits improvements that you all have approved have been a tremendous improvement for the organization as a whole. The employees truly see a difference, not only in their jobs, but also in their lifestyle outside of work because of the actions you've taken and the foresight that you've had on these things. So do want to go through and talk about our accomplishments so far for FY20 through FY23, some of the policy changes that we've implemented, what we've seen as far as the hiring and referral bonuses go, and then finally end with some additional opportunities and start giving you guys some ideas on additional direction that we might need in preparing the FY24 and future budgets. So starting with the history, in FY20, we had a 1.3% cost of living adjustment, but the more important factor on this slide is that that's the year we started our 50% dependent medical coverage benefit. In FY21, had a cost of living increase, no other benefit additions. And then in FY22, we did a whole slew of things to improve conditions for our employees. That was the 10% COLA. We jumped up dependent medical coverage from 50% to 75%. We added short-term disability and paid family leave. And then in January, we implemented the first portion of the pay and classification study and also toggled and revised some policy around holiday vacation hour accruals and also a holiday hours banked option for folks to choose when they take their holiday hours. And this year, we're continuing with the 75th percentile. We implemented that on July 1st with budget adoption. We improved the merit-based pay system. So we went from a 1 for achieves, a 1.75% for exceeds, and a 2.5% for outstanding performance reviews to 1, 2, and 3. And we also made continual efforts to keep our health insurance costs low by revising our employee health and wellness metrics that are measured through action and insight that was taken by the Health and Wellness Committee. I also want to note our retirement system contributions, as on the city side, are listed up in the top right. Those have increased year over year. We continue to see those rise. At some point, we will hit the target the state treasurer's office has for that percentage, and that amount accrued. So it's receiving enough interest to continue self-sustaining. It is very sustainable at the moment. It's one of the most sustainable pension systems in the entire country. And there's just additional scrutiny being placed on it to ensure it continues that trend.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Our city employees, at what year service are they vested or something?
In the retirement system?
Yes.
Year 5. Year 5.
5 years, yes, sir, because I just hit it.
Yeah.
So I'm vested. Thank you.
Yeah, so year 5.
That's vested for pension benefits, not necessarily health benefits.
That's correct. Health benefits is 30 years.
Yep, with the city specifically.
Yes, specifically. One thing while we're here, I mentioned the health and wellness metrics. Your health and wellness program that started before I was here. We'll be able to, we've got the numbers, and we'll hear more about this during the budget time. Or are you going to talk about this in a minute? Okay, I'll be quiet then.
Just to confirm, there's a 1% pay increase for meeting your job.
Yes. You baseline achieve the goals set out in the performance increase system, you will get a 1% cost of living increase.
Can I ask a follow-up question? You don't have.
Go ahead.
So when a department head is determining whether one achieves or is outstanding, are there any budget limitations on how many employees can receive that, or a pot of money you can dish it out this way? Or
We budget for it based on averages. So
okay.
We aggregate all of the performance evaluations, get an understanding of where most employees end up, and apply a percentage assumption to what we budget. But we do not limit the number of employees that can have an outstanding or an exceeds or an achieves. So talking a little bit more about the medical coverage benefit, got a history here back to FY19 just so I can show you guys the percent change for FY20. Going from FY19 to 20, there was almost a 15% increase in the medical benefit. And we also added the 50% dependent coverage benefit. So you can see in the left column under FY20, those costs all increased. However, the dependent medical coverage on the employee cost column actually decreased, and that was through the implementation of that 50% dependent coverage that you all chose to move forward. In FY21, again, no change to the premium or coverage. And FY22, we offered the 75% dependent coverage benefit. And through all these actions we've taken with the Wellness Committee in mitigating our health insurance costs and getting an understanding of what we need to do to create a healthy and safe work environment, we actually received a premium decrease of 3%. So the significance there is that, you know, if I had a spouse in FY21, I was paying $367. I think that's the monthly cost for my spouse to be on medical insurance. But in FY22, that cost got cut almost in half because of the additional dependent coverage moving up to 75% from 50%, and also the premium decreasing. And then finally, in this year, we got great news. We got another premium decrease by almost 12%. And Brian just told me a couple days ago, just why it's not on this slide, but in FY24, we're expecting no premium increase. So at zero for next year, which helps us.
Inflation rate. Wow.
Yeah.
So it'll be 3 years running that we've had a decrease or no increase on your medical insurance premium costs. So I think we're doing the right thing.
Which leads us into the other benefits that we started providing beginning July 1, 21. The first being the paid family leave benefit, which in summary allows employees 6 weeks of paid leave for major life changes. So newborns, if somebody adopts a child or takes one under foster care, receives guardianship, or has to care for a spouse or a parent with a serious illness. And that's the definition of serious illness. Next slide, please.
That's a yearly benefit?
Jennifer, is it annual?
Yeah, it's rolling. Yeah, it refreshes each year.
So you can see since inception, we've had 34 uses of that paid family leave benefit with a total of 178 weeks allowed for city employees to leave on paid family leave. The only eligibility requirements are that the employee must have worked 12 months with the city, and the employees that use this benefit can either take 6 consecutive weeks off or they can use it intermittently. This benefit can also be partnered with the short-term disability, which I'll talk about in a second. The paid family leave, along with the short-term leave, has costed the city $52,000 to date, and that is to hire part-time and overtime staff to cover gaps where it's absolutely necessary. So, for example, a few folks here in City Hall had to leave. We did not incur an additional cost for part-time or overtime related to their leave, but members of the department like fire, police would have to be covered in their leave because we do have minimum staffing requirements and they are expected to show up if there's a fire. So, short-term disability benefit. This is just what the policy says. During the disability leave, employees won't get any contributions to the retirement system or 401k. But on the next slide, the important things for short-term disability benefit are that employees have to be working at least 30 hours. Most of our employees are full-time. Employees will receive 60% of their baseline pay during the period that they take the short-term leave benefit. And then this can be partnered with the paid family leave for childbirth benefit, which can give a mother up to 12 weeks off following childbirth. And in the top right, again, we have the number of uses of this benefit, whether they were or were not partnered with paid family leave, and the total number of weeks employees have taken off since 2021 on using that short-term leave benefit. And the reason these are important is because the employees are really grateful for you guys for it. So I don't want to read it all. I did go through and bold and change the color on some really impactful messages that the employees left for you all about what this has done to change their lifestyle and especially help them out of really hard situations. So this first employee has a child who requires some specific medical attention that cannot be received here. So they're having to go to Charlotte to get that done. And they specifically state that they can't use that benefit with, they can't take care of the needs and also work at the city without this benefit. And this was so impactful that this person admitted they cried because of the stress that was, taken off their plate. So that's a huge impact there. Another employee who has to take care of their elderly dependents, their parents. There's no way they could have done it without these two benefits, and they would have retired if these benefits didn't exist. Had another employee who had 2 newborns, and they were just really appreciative of that, quality time they were able to spend with their newborn babies. And they really appreciate working for an employer that, really prioritizes the employees' personal lives. Another employee that had a parent as a dependent, they were really happy to have this benefit, and they also noticed what this benefit did for the employee who has to drive their child to Charlotte to get medical care. So again, just echoing that appreciation. And finally, there's, yeah. You can, yeah. Gives me a second to catch my breath anyway. So, the resounding message here is thank you. Without you guys, without your vision, this benefit wouldn't exist. Brian wouldn't have been able to spend, the time he did with Ada. So we all want to say thank you for enacting this benefit, this group of benefits. So we really appreciate that. And then final accomplishments, transitioning out of the tearjerker to the business side of the house again. We've got a hiring and recruitment program. So far, life to date, we've had 65 new hires eligible to receive a hiring bonus. 54 out of those 65 were retained. If an employee is not retained, we try to rake back that funding. Of the 54 who were retained, 22 employees received a $4,500 bonus. We changed the policy. After the policy changed, 32 employees were hired with a $4,000 hiring bonus. And again, inception to date, we've paid out about $227,000 to recruit new employees. It also has an impact on the existing employees because there is a referral program. We had 25 employees provide eligible referrals, and out of those 25, 8 were paid $500, 11 were paid $1,000, again, due to the policy change. So a total of $15,000 was paid out to existing employees for referring new employees who stayed with the organization. And that's only paid to existing employees like me, Brian, or Jenny, or any of the other staff in the room if the person they refer sticks on with our organization at least past their 6-month review. And transitioning into the look ahead off of what we've accomplished, we've heard from stay surveys, we've heard from pay in class, we've received a lot of employee feedback. Again, we're really appreciative of the benefits that we already have, and if council would like to continue exploring additional options, this next half of the slideshow just talks a little bit about what we could explore and where we can expand. So first up on the list is our performance evaluation pay merit system, all interchangeable verbiage. So one of the things we heard from the pay in class study was that we needed to get supervisors more consistent with how performance-based pay increases and reviews were handled. So demystifying that idea that maybe, there's only a certain percentage of employees that can get and achieves versus exceeds versus outstanding. So that was, one of the targets there, but it was also about giving our managers the soft skills they need to help people be successful in their careers. And so far, we've partnered with the School of Government. We've completed 1 2-day training, which I was at the operations facility. I thought it was pretty cool. Jenny might disagree with me. We've got 2 more upcoming, one at the end of March, one in mid-April. And aside from the supervisor training, we are forming a performance pay review committee. So this is formed out of a group of 15 city staff. I've written out all their departmental representations. And what they're going to do is a comprehensive review of the existing system, pick it apart, do research, find other systems that they like better, other systems they like worse, get a group recommendation, and come to management with ideas on how we can change, which leads us ultimately potentially providing you guys an altered policy recommendation on the performance pay system. In a vacuum, though, without that performance pay review committee's input, just continuing with management's idea to improve the state of merit-based pay, we are recommending continued increases to the different categories in the merit-based system. And Jenny told me that this one might be confusing, so I'm going to try to point, and Brian can try to point. So again, FY22, we already talked about where we were. Gray area here, this is where we're at. We're at 1, 2, and 3. Next year in the budget, we're currently recommending we add a 0.25% differential. So we'll move to 1, 2.25, and 3.5. And then I'll skip out to FY27 because the ultimate goal is to get to 1, 3, and 5. So totally council's decision here, and we're happy to take your direction either tonight or at a later time about how we want to get there, if we want to get there, if we want to stop, if we want to push the gas, if we want to go full throttle. So this is the plan. Yes, sir.
And these performance bonuses, they're not bonuses. These are base pay increases.
They're based on the employee's annual performance. Yes, sir.
No. They're base pay increases, not a bonus.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
COLA.
Yes. Yes. And then the big one that we heard a lot about in state surveys and pay in class, it was a council priority, I think in FY 19 or 20. Can't remember when we were at the facility that's now Second Act. This was identified as a council priority as well at that time, and we felt now is the time to have another discussion about it and continue to explore a potential 401k match. So we got a lot of data from the pay in class study. We were very fortunate to have that done, and that makes this analysis a lot easier on Jenny and myself, on Brian, on John. So here's a list of all the municipalities that we compared ourselves to that provide either a match or an automatic contribution for 401k. And we've also got some others. So you'll notice Henderson County, Buncombe County are on the list. And I also made it a point to talk with Empower, our current 401k provider, about what other jurisdictions that we're competing with might offer 401k benefits. So you'll see the Land of Sky Regional Council, Blue Ridge Fire and Rescue, some of the utilities that we compared ourselves to in the pay in class study also included on that list. In the next slide, same concept. Here's who provides it, but here's also how they provide it. So it's maybe not as legible, but the highlights I want to hit here are the city of Asheville and Buncombe County provide a contribution. So regardless of whether the employee puts any money into their 401k, that local government is putting money at that rate into the employee's 401k. So Henderson County, another obvious competitor, they're doing an up to 2% match. And when I say up to, and when the chart says up to, it means it's a match. So if I give 1%, the jurisdiction gives 1%. If I give 2, the jurisdiction gives 2. And that's the summary of all those different areas that are already providing a benefit that we're competing against. And I also wanted to take a look at who's currently enrolled, not only in the 401k, but also in the 457, which is on the next slide. So in summary, there are 122 employees currently participating by enrolling in the 401k, either before tax or after tax. Some are offering a dollar contribution, some are offering a % contribution, but in total, 122 employees, which is about 33% of our workforce, is participating in that 401k program. Although the dollar amounts are a little funny, because you'll see somebody is putting $1 into that 401k match every paycheck, which I don't understand, but somebody's doing $1. Hopefully they're increasing that. Some folks are doing 280, and then, you know, a lot of folks are on a percentage-based contribution, with the average before tax being about 5, and with the average after tax being about 5.5%. Yes, ma'am.
Does the 33% participation, is that low because there are part-time employees as well in that amount that you're kind of calculating, or what is the reasoning for such a low participation in 401k?
Based on our just FTE count. So there are part-time, but I don't think that's the reason. I think it's more that we don't offer the match, and the match incentivizes additional participation. And in a few slides, I've got an assumption from Empower about who's going to participate if we offer the match. So stay tuned. Same data, 457. Wanted to show this because some of the employees that are on a 457, if we offer a match, may switch over. There is some overlap. Some employees who are doing a 401k are also contributing to a 457. Some employees are just doing a 457. It's a slightly different benefit, and I don't have or know the details on it, but Jennifer and Deanna back there definitely do. Yeah. And here's where our participation assumed comes into place, and also the estimated impact per fund. So 62%, Empower went out and surveyed all these employers that they work with in the state of North Carolina and outside, and said, on average, if you offer a match benefit, 62% of your employees are going to contribute in some fashion to a 401k. So in the first column here, backing it up just a little bit, we've got the average payroll. So we've got 26 payrolls a year. One payroll is about $757,000 for the city of Hendersonville. I've got that broken out by fund. If we take that breakout by fund, multiply it by 26 to get a year, multiply it by 62%, which is our participation assumption, we can get an idea of the cost at 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%, and I also included 8% because that's what Buncombe County offers, the cost per each fund. So you can see if we offer a 2% match, it's going to create about $128,000 cost impact on the general fund, almost $100,000 for water and sewer, and a few $1,000s for the more minor funds that Jenny helped present on. If we get a little more aggressive with the participation, you can see how that changes. And finally, 100% participation. This probably isn't going to happen if we do a match, but this is what I would consider the cost impact if we choose not to do a match, but rather a contribution. So if we're giving employees a 401k amount each pay cycle without requiring that they contribute on their own. Yes, sir. The average payroll.
26 paychecks a year.
Yes, sir.
That's not monthly.
So annual cost overpassed the participation assumed. So wanted to show you guys what a payroll cycle costed us. but wanted to show you what the cost impact for the entire year would look like if we implemented it. Okay. They're amazed with the work. Yeah, thank you. All right. Finally, so no direction needed tonight. You're welcome to give it. But there were also some additional benefits suggested. I just want to hit on those. The two that stuck out during the paying class study and that have continued to stick out during state surveys are on-site childcare or partnered childcare with another agency, and options for remote work flexibility for positions that can remote work.
Do you have any numbers on the people that would participate if there was on-site childcare?
I do not have that. Brian, would you participate?
I would absolutely participate, but Jennifer presented this at the staff retreat. Jennifer, do you have any?
I don't have any numbers. I know there's some in this building, like yourself, that would participate, and there's some water sewer individuals that work down with water.
Can you come to the mic? I'm getting waved at.
For the clerk's record, Jennifer said there are some employees that would.
Yes, there's several people that I think that would benefit for this and use this. I know there's some in the building here that would do that now. They're out now because they don't have childcare. They're working back and forth, and some in water sewer. I know there's some gentlemen down there that would participate as well. And we'd call it City Kitty Daycare.
So would it be, where would the site be?
We do not know yet.
And then would it be only for city employees?
There's the potential we could partner. Again, there's the idea that we could partner with other agencies and do a shared facility, or we could choose to do an on-site, and it could be open or it could be closed to city employees only.
And we would own this daycare. It would be ours.
Yes.
So we would be in the daycare business.
Yes.
This is just something that came up during a stay survey, and Jennifer brought up at the staff retreat. So I just wanted to present it. We have not done any homework on what this would take to implement.
This is pie in the sky for the budget office. Sorry. Yes. Yes.
That is kind of general consensus. We could definitely, that's what we're looking for tonight, any general consensus around what you want us to pursue further.
Maybe you could partnership with children resource center.
I would think it would get dicey with the nonprofit participation. But I know that I've spoken to a county commissioner about childcare, and it's a big priority for them as well. And so I wonder if that would be something to see if anybody's interested in, I don't know, like local municipalities, county-wide type benefit for employees. I don't know if that's something that they would be willing to discuss too, but 100% would do that.
10-4, loud and clear. We'll look into some options. So to wrap up my part and give you guys a 5-minute early ending. You guys have done a lot. There's more to consider. Here's what to consider. There's merit-based pay changes floating around out there. There's a committee formed, but there's also budget recommendations that we'll continue marching with. We want to know from you all, maybe not at this meeting, but whether the recruitment and retention program should change to potentially use that funding in other programs that might be a higher priority. We want to know what your thoughts are on the 401k match. If there's a percentage you'd like to start with and move to another percentage over time, or if you want to go ahead and say, this is the percentage we want to go with and we want to match it, or we want to do a contribution. And then finally, again, the daycare, remote work options. And if you all have any other ideas on how to improve our employee benefits, we're happy to do that research. Yes.
I would like to see us extend the time for paid family leave, because when I did that research a couple years ago, an effective policy is actually 12 weeks. And I know we considered all those possibilities, but because it has received so much feedback from employees, I would like to see us increase that time. Crickets. I was gonna say, anybody? Hello?
They're amazed with your thoughts, Councilmember Simpson.
I do have a question about, I don't know, I have funny opinions about merit. I think merit is like an earned, doing more than just basic. And so I have great issues with just rewarding somebody for doing their job. And with this merit-based information, and I feel like I don't really have enough information. Like, do governments in general just continue increasing pay year by year with no like reference for what everybody around them is doing, or state averages or national averages? And so like I feel like I don't really have enough information to make recommendations like that. Like I would like to see what is considered normal and customary, especially when you're talking about like there's also COLA that is included in that. So, you know, like are these numbers sustainable over time? What also a question I have would be, what would be a budgetary impact for like an up to 3% match from the city? And then does that require a tax increase, or do we have money in general fund that would fund that over time? And then, so those are just some questions that I would like right now have.
Definitely. We can do that additional research and come back to council. There's Empower would have more detail on the specifics of the match, and we could definitely work on the revenues and supporting the program if you all choose to continue down the path of an action.
So Jen, you said 3% match. You're looking at, is that what you asked?
An up to 3%, because I do like how it's structured. If an employee is, putting in 1%, then we put in 1. If they're 3, then we would do 3. But that I would like an up to type situation as well. I like kind of that plan.
Yeah. So this at this 62% participation, up to 3%, we could pay as much as $192,000 out of the general fund annually. To your first question on merit systems, that was designed and studied after local governments in North Carolina. It came from the UNC School of Government. I think that was last done in 2016. Jennifer, I'm looking at you on the MAPS group.
Just give her a chair up here.
2014 or 15 was the last time we did that study, Jennifer. So that was what we have there, and we could certainly consult with folks about what's going on in the state outside of just our internal group. So no issue with that. And your last question was, how are models doing right now for general fund availability to spend money on these things?
Well, like, is that where the money would come from? That was my question.
Yeah, it would have to come from the general. Well, it would come from all funds in some form or fashion, but the general fund.
It would not warrant any type of
it will certainly warrant some sort of new revenue or retraction of other benefit services. We've talked about how long should this hiring bonus stick around. That's essentially equates to the same amount at 2% program, or actually it would match a 3% program for what we've paid to date in hiring bonuses. So you could start, trading horses.
And what is the percentage of like vacancies that we have in positions now?
Jennifer.
So we're 10 or 11%, don't you think we are?
No, 11 vacancies. Positions. We've been running 2 to 3%.
2, 3.
We've had a really good turnover rate. Like really good.
Yeah, our turnover rate in 22 was like 8%.
Okay.
And goal is national goal.
Less than 10, right?
And we're going to talk about just how the general fund's doing here in a second. So, any other questions, benefits wise?
Thanks for bearing with me, folks.
So how much time do we have left? I saw you put 8 p.m. on this sheet. It's 8.
I just ordered my ride home. I'm not gonna finish today.
How much time you got, you think? 30 more minutes?
Depends how much they want to talk, I guess. I could just give them the real high level and we can talk tomorrow. This Han Solo is great. And it's... I'll do it highest level possible, and it will take a couple minutes.
Okay.
All right. So if you remember the funds, we won't get into the whole model. This was the old version where we saw a 6-cent tax increase, a 20% reval recapture, and a 1 cent tax increase post reval. Good news is we've updated that model based on everything that's been going on. We only did a 3-cent tax increase. We held off this current year to see if we could get to this reval and see how we're doing with the 20% and no additional tax increases. So based on our revenue neutral number, we would drop to 49 cents. We're good for 2 years before the red blocks start. The things that are included in that you won't be able to see on this page because we'll go into that. I can explain this tomorrow at the station if you'd like, if you want to come over and we can talk more about it. But this is just our baseline projects, nothing new. No park loans, no transportation loans, no affordable housing contributions, and a 3% COLA, no 401k match. Pretty much everything we've talked about in the past. As is, you take 20 percentage points of that revaluation, you go to 49 cents on the tax rate, and you're good for a couple of years before you have to make any major decisions. But again, nothing new besides some property maintenance workers are included in this. Quick highlight, revenue neutral tax rates, early numbers. The general fund's revenue neutral rate would be 42, Main Street would be 20, and 7th actually goes up. 7th decreased for certain reasons I'm sure many of you are aware of, from a certain property going off the tax books, would actually increase to about 19 cents. And I think I'm going to just end it there. Is that fair?
Copies of these things that we can actually read.
Yes, we have all that available. We were going to go in and zoom in and talk about it, but just based on the time, we'll not do that tonight.
So we do have, you know, our general fund model. We can have it available tomorrow. Maybe as we're doing some prioritization, it will be available if we need to use it to help do some prioritization at the end of the retreat. That may be.
Yep, we'll do that.
Helpful. So
yeah,
let's plan to have it available in the afternoon or after we do prioritization, so that we can show what that means and have that discussion. And also, I think you'll be showing the housing dashboard.
Yeah, I'll just highlight them real quick. There's 4 other dashboards we didn't see tonight. One, we have an org chart that's posted on our website now. So if anyone in the public has any interest about how many employees we have, where they're located, who they're supervised by, you can find that on the website. We have a revaluation calculator so you can figure out your tax rate and your actual tax bill impacts. We have a cost of service map that will talk through the tower chart as it's been deemed in the past, and a housing report that shows all the housing developments that are underway in the city, their cost of services, what's been built, what's been entitled, what's under construction, things like that.
So we'll find time to share, is particularly the tower chart and that cost of service tomorrow. Okay.
Is the tower chart the one that was like the most valuable property and
Yes.
who owns it? It's our favorite. I love that chart.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, so we're wrapping up here at 8 o'clock. A minute or two after. We'll get back together at 8. Begin at 8:30 in the morning. We'll have some breakfast foods from Joey's Bagels available, and coffee, and we'll go through the day.
You want this email to you or
if you can the main thing is for you to have thought it out. if you can, just so you can read it tomorrow, is the answer to the question. I mean, 'cause some of you may have already typed it out on the computer and, but I'll take it either way. I'll take it either way. But the main
Are
thing,
we in, do you walk in or did you?
we'll just use it for discussion.
Handwritten.
Okay, that's great.
There it is.
Madam Mayor, I believe we're done, so.
All right.